And I actually enjoyed it. It was, it's easy to read, and it's easy, it flows into what you're saying. And there's certain parts of it that are quite interesting. I'll come to that when I talk to you right now. Thank you so much for taking our time to talk about your new book. Can you tell us a little bit about the story behind the book? What inspired you? How did it come about?
So I have to say, I'm an accidental author by far. Never planned to do my first book, which I did in 2015. And at that stage, two things happened. One, I was seeing a lot of entrepreneurs sitting on the fence, not really moving forward and indecisive. And I think the other part was they were really spooked with failures. So I wrote the first book with that motivation in life. Cut to 2021, when I've done this book, my motivation really was having founded Upgrad and interacting with really nothing less than tens of thousands of learners, whether they're undergrad or postgrad, 2 years into a job, 5 years into a job, meeting with them, meeting with alumni, doing research and focus groups across 5,000 and 10,000 people. My clear finding was that I think we're still very challenged on soft skills. And, soft skills is a sort of evolved word, but by and large, it really means the core skills that can get you by outside of your knowledge and your qualifications. So many people wanted to switch jobs, wanted to suddenly become a data analytics or a digital marketing expert or do something in fintech. But when it came to an interview, they would be challenged as they were 5 years back, because that's when that mindset would come in. So to me, the trigger for this book was, I'm a product of soft skills. I did my BCom and I stopped. I failed in my inter, and that was my first, one of the many, many, many failures that I had. So I'm a product of soft skills. I came from a lower middle class background. So it's not that communication, confidence, clarity of thought came naturally to me at all. But I think I decided to be an entrepreneur, and I knew these were the stakes at hand. And therefore I pushed myself. So being a product of soft skills, I felt it was very important that I shared many, many of my experiences to tell people that while there is a lot that goes with the knowledge base and how we will constantly in lifelong learning continue to get degrees and get specializations, if we don't get our soft skills right, we're not really going to be able to advance that well in life.
So how much of your own success do you attribute to soft skills? And, I do, when I was reading your book, you do mention that it's not, and you did say that even now, that it's not something that, you're taught in school. And of course, the way, perhaps, I don't know if I'm right saying this, the way our education system is when you're growing up and you're in school, you're not really taught this. It's not part of your curriculum.
You're not taught this.
So I want to know, how much of your success do you attribute to soft skills, and how did you learn these soft skills?
So I think I would say, if I had to ascribe a percentage, it would be almost like 99% of it. Primarily because I'm saying I didn't have the formal education that I would have liked to have at that stage. And then I never went back to do my MBA or my chartered accountancy or any post-graduation degree in the first place. So therefore, if I took the plunge from a lower middle class background with a family of only professionals and became an entrepreneur and didn't have any education qualifications to back that or a plan B, then it was really getting your own level of soft skills. I mean, soft skills gives you that level of confidence, that gives you the level of self-conviction, that gives you the level. And I think for most people today, I think when I say something like not giving up and staying the course, and a lot of people look at giving up as like giving up. And actually what you're doing when you're giving up is you're giving up on yourself. You're not really giving up on the idea, the business, the job, the nothing. When you give up, you're giving yourself up on your own. So I think being a first generation entrepreneur, knowing that I didn't have a choice. And at that early stage, my parents told me, why don't you do an MBA or a chartered accountancy and then start your entrepreneurship? And I knew that that would have been a plan B, which means that 99% I would have landed up in a job, because for 2 years, nothing would have worked for me as an entrepreneur after I finished my MBA. And then I said, yeah, the natural thing is to go for a job. But because I cut that option out, it forced me to actually get to the next level, to hone my skills in communication, in self-confidence, in clarity. And with that comes everything else, right? It's a surround sound system. The soft skills is all interconnected with each other. It's not like I'm an expert in communication, but I haven't a clue on this, that, and the other. it is a bit of a circle of life that you need to communicate and that you need to complete.
So in your book, you do speak about communication. Now, it's interesting that you've spoken to a range of experts from the industry, and they all kind of seem to agree on keeping your communication concise, and it has to be short and to the point, which is great, of course, in today's day and age when you're sort of got so many things coming at you. But I want to know from you, don't you think that connecting with your subject or connecting with your audience is perhaps more important than keeping that very short, precise, crisp communication?
I fully agree, and just I want to clarify that very clearly for everyone. I'm not saying, that's why I said it's all interconnected, because my next chapter is about storytelling, and storytelling can't be concise and sharp. So I'm saying it's interconnected. The chapter on communication is to hone in that don't ramble and be a little bit prepared. But that doesn't mean that you become a staccato, monosyllabic communicator in life. It is one chapter that says, if you ramble, then you don't have much to speak about. If you can't command attention, you can't speak about that. But the next chapter, as I said, is storytelling. So I'm not one that says you need to be a staccato person. I'm having this conversation with you. I can give you monosyllabic answers to all your questions, but I'm being a little bit more narrative to communicate. So I think it's very important, and you got to ask a very relevant question. And no, it's not about being only clipped in life. It's about being relevant.
I want to know from you about multitasking. I love that because you start by saying, I was taught multitasking by my dog. What was the name of your dog?
Sprite.
Okay. And what did Sprite teach you in regards to multitasking?
You know how it is. It just goes straight when you get that one fine day, the penny drop. Multitasking, firstly, there are two aspects to multitasking, just so that I get that clear. There is this whole high level of distraction multitasking, which is that you're constantly multi-distracted. And therefore you feel you can talk to me, but I'm still looking at a message. If the phone goes ping, I'll continue to do that. I'm very focused on doing this interview, right? I do not want to now look at my eyes this way or have a thought process, because otherwise I won't be able to communicate with you. So there's a whole world of multitasking, which is multi-distraction, which I think is just all the way negative, because you're doing everything 5 times over. Every time you're distracted, you think you're dispensing off with 3 mails, 2 messages, and communicating in person, actually doing none of the 3, because at least 3 of those things will come back and haunt you. And then there's the people that feel that, look, in life today, you can't be doing one single thing at a time. I mean, even somebody who's a homemaker feels, I have to do a couple of things in the kitchen and look at this and look at that. That multitasking is good, but it needs focus. Because what happens with multitasking is you become so accustomed to it and you revel in it so much that it loses focus for you. So if you're clear that multi-distraction is out and multitasking is something that is not the best thing going unless you're focused on one singular thing, which it doesn't allow you to do, you're not going to get very far in life. And if you ask me today, in my 20, 30 years of experience, what are the 1 or 2 things, if I had the chance, if somebody mentored me rightly, would I do differently? It would be focus. If I think I would have focused in my earlier years as much as I think I'm focusing right now, the less for more approach is an evolved thought, but it is a very important thought in life. And I think if I did focus, I'd be at a very different place than what I am today if I'd learned focus for the first 10 years of my life, or somebody who mentored me very strongly on that.
But I understand what you're saying, and I completely get what you're saying, but bosses nowadays, like I'm just going to take that example. When you're an employee, you're given multiple projects, right? So do you think that at some point that concept will change in offices, in organizations, where they will allow employees to focus on one project and employees will not feel pressured to work on multiple things together?
No, I think this is not a cop-out for anybody that says, oh, wait a minute, do you want me to do one thing right, or do you want me to do 3 things average? I don't think any employee is going to have that choice. And I don't think that's going to be the environment. But if you're the mergers and acquisition head, you could be handling 6 mergers and acquisition, but you're only looking at that. If you're a research and data analyst, it'll be in that world. In that world, you can multitask as far as I'm concerned. The second one is, in a day, if there are 3 different projects that you're working on, the problem seems to be that we can never get our minds off one project and into the next. And I think the difference is work on 3 projects, but at that moment, work on 1 project at a time. At this moment, I've decided to do this interview. Okay, now there's a lot of things that I came all the way to 4 o'clock for you and for me, and a lot of things that will happen at 5 o'clock and it'll go out there. But at this point, if I can give everything I want to hear and pick up what I want to do for the next one, that's where we miss out. That's where we really miss out.
So the focus is the key.
It's back to the focus. You can do 3 things you can have multiple agendas with diverse situations in the day. But at that time, if you're thinking of your 3 meetings ahead to prepare and 2 meetings that distracted you because somebody irritated you, can you imagine what a mess of a day it is?
So let's talk a little bit about success and failure. I want to understand from you, what is, according to you, say a few traits, 3 traits maybe, of a successful leader? And what is your take on failure?
I mean, my take on failure is it's staring at you in the face almost every single day, 10 times a day. And that's how it works. I think my ratio of success to failure for almost everything that I've done in my life, micro and macro, is 8:2, meaning 8 failures and 2 successes. But what has worked well for me is that the successes have to be 10x each. And the failures, they're binary, right? Whatever happened, you lost that. So that's a 1x. So if I look at the maths of it, if I fail 8 times, it's -8. And if I succeed 2 times big time, that's +20. So I'm still 12 plus. And I know it's a mathematical context, but that's exactly what it would mean. So I think failure is an absolute given because there's absolutely no way I would have done the 10x success formulas if I hadn't failed those times. But the people who are looking for succeeding 8 times and failing twice, firstly, it's a misnomer. It's not going to happen. And the second one is your successes may also be a bit of a whimper. You know, they might be just neither here nor there. They might be flat. And then you assess your whole world from a very different point of view. Unless you really taste success, you're not going to be able to really understand and appreciate failure. And unfortunately, it doesn't work in that order. Normally, it's a lot of failure and then some success. So I think that's the part as far as what I think about failure. Your other question was?
Traits of a successful leader.
You know, I think we'll all talk about lots of things like you can be a good listener, whatever else. I found 2 things, but one of the most important ones that sums up for me a lot is empathy. You know, and it's not a normal conventional trace, but I think between the successful people and the super successful people, you might actually think that, no, wait a minute, but I see a lot of television series and OTT series that talk about you need to be ruthless, you need to be this, that's when you succeed. But I think the long-term success for a lot of phenomenal leaders is empathy. Because actually empathy is not just about sympathy or being a soft person. You can be a very hard-nosed person. But the best success is going to be when you can take a lot of people along with you, because no journey of yours is alone. And the best way you can do that is where you have the right kind of empathy, which means you're almost every time in that person's shoes, then you can take them along. That's when you build long-term people, you build long-term relationships, you build long-term loyalty, you build a long-term empowerment, all of that.
So now I want to change track a little bit and talk about Upgrad. Just for our viewers, could you tell us a little bit about Upgrad and tell us about what are the next steps? It's done really well in the last year. And, you know, there have been a lot of hirings at very well-known companies. So, yeah.
So I think, you know, when I moved out of media, which to me was a high impact sector, and I'm saying high impact because you tell stories that really impact a lot of people's minds. And then when I decided what I wanted to do ground up, again, education and edtech struck me as something that was very important and interesting to do, a place where I could be very disruptive. So I chose the higher education because that's where I think the real retention. I mean, the K-12 is about tutoring and a lot of content. And right now, of course, it's attracting a lot of funding. But overall, to me, the real life-changing difference was going to happen in the higher education space because that's where you really need to get it disruptive. So essentially, that's pretty much Upgrad's vision, you know, to be a lifelong partner worldwide to multiple people. Because education is a great leveler. It doesn't mean that you can do the same. If you can do it in India, you can do it in most other countries across. But deep learning. Because today, everyone in higher education looks at education as an event. You know, you do your school, then you do your college, and then you're done. So it's like an event in your life is over. The last time you graduate and throw that hat up, if that's what you've done. you just feel that's a chapter in my life that's over. But actually it's not. It's a chapter in your life that's now just starting, because every 5 years, you're going to have to do that. You may not need to throw a hat up. You're going to have to do that. But you're never going to have the luxury every 5 years to take a year off and go back to a college or university or whatever else. And therefore, to me, the whole education, the concept of edtech and therefore bringing it online was really what I think we're just starting up. We're just starting up in how we want to impact. That's what's exciting about our brand.
But what sets it apart? What sets Upgrad apart?
Normally, when you look at online education, everyone looks at it as content consumption. And I think the MOOCs, which was the sort of multi-learner approach, came in and that failed big time, because you think online means, it's anonymous. If I don't log on tomorrow, nobody will notice me. I can be a dropout and nobody will care. Whereas in college, when you were a dropout, you got listed as far as that is concerned. And it's not deep learning, and I can be in and out. And most people don't complete. So I think the rigor at Upgrad is where we have about 85% completion is really deep learning. It's about, on day one, you're almost giving an offline feel to it because of our technology platform. It's a very interactive process. It's high touch in a digital world with counselors. And that's really our differentiator, really. The outcomes, the completion rates, and the deep learning.
How are you planning to expand in terms of Upgrad? What are you looking at?
So actually, and this is something from my media days again, where for me, having an integrated approach to anything, I'm a firm believer that the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts in whatever one builds. And I know a lot of people in a lot of business, actually, they have either you have a subsidiary here, or you have a different business here, or you have a different business here, you list 5 of your companies, whatever else, but the whole is definitely more valuable than the sum of the parts. And therefore, for us, the vision is that in the entire post K-12 sector, we want to be a lifelong learner where somebody will come back to us every 2 to 3 years for an undergrad degree, to a test prep, to anything that they want to do from a college, to the short form courses, to the deep learning courses, to masters and degrees, to PhD, and everything in between. And now, soft skills.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this lovely book. And I'm sure that it's going to be an enjoyable read for everybody. They'll learn a lot from it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.